If you are not worried about fraud, you should be.
Welcome to All About Capital Campaigns, a podcast that provides fuel for your nonprofit's growth. Each week, Andrea Kihlstedt and Amy Eisenstein, co-founders of Capital Campaign Pro, provide practical tips about raising more money for your nonprofit organization. Here are your hosts, Amy and Andrea.
Hi, I'm Amy Eisenstein. I'm here with my colleague, friend, co-founder, Andrea Kihlstedt, and today we are talking about, unfortunately, rampant fraud. And Andrea, you have a story that sort of inspired this episode. So why don't you kick us off with what just happened to you?
Yes, thanks, Amy. I hate that we have to talk about fraud. I hate that this is happening, that it is rampant. And I found out today when I went to the bank about this, the bank said that it's happening a lot. So let me tell you what happened. In April of this year, 2024, I wrote a check as an estimated tax payment. And the check that I wrote was for $508. I sent it to the state of New Jersey, right? And it was written out to the state of New Jersey. And I sent it along with a couple of other estimated tax payments. And I just wrote the checks. I put them in envelopes. I put it in the mailbox, sent it along, never thought again about it. Until late last week, I got a bill from the state of New Jersey saying that I owed them $508 plus interest because I hadn't paid my estimated tax payment. Well, you can imagine I was surprised, right? So I went online and went into my bank account to look and see what the story was. And as I was nosing around, I saw my 3 estimated tax payment checks, and I clicked on the checks. You know, they give you a copy of the checks once the checks have cleared. So I clicked on one and it looked fine. I clicked on the second one, it looked fine. The one from New Jersey on the check payable to no longer said the state of New Jersey. It had a name of someone I had never heard of before and had no idea about. And the amount was changed from $508 to $4,400. Now, the check had cleared. Now, it's a little embarrassing that I didn't notice that, I must confess. It happened to be at a time when I had a good deal of money in my account. I was jiggling some money around, and I hadn't looked carefully, right? I just hadn't looked carefully. When I looked carefully at the check and I saw someone else's name, you could faintly see that what I had written had been erased in some way, and the person had simply written his or her information on top of it, and in the memo line had written his or her account number, right over the stuff that I had written for my estimated taxes.
Amazing. So blatant, now, these criminals are.
So blatant.
Yeah.
So blatant. And the reality is that had the state of New Jersey not sent me an invoice, I probably would never have thought, it would have gone by.
Now,
right?
I'm guessing some listeners who either watch their bank accounts closely or keep a minimum balance are like, oh my gosh, how could you have not noticed $3,000 that went missing?
I know.
But at an organization that's a running multi-million-dollar budgets, it might be easy to miss some kind of thing like that. And so whether it's your personal accounts or your organization accounts, and truthfully, if they had just changed it to the same amount, Andrea, you would never have been a hard time to notice. They could have just put their name in and not changed the amount at all, and it would have been $500. You would never have noticed.
Well, I would have noticed because I got the bill from them saying that I hadn't paid it.
Well, that's the only reason that you noticed.
That's the only reason that I would have noticed.
All right, so let's talk about, first of all, the reason that we decided to bring up this topic is because this is the third incident in the last month that we have personally witnessed this happening. Not exactly the same thing, but fraud, right? Taking money out of somebody's account. Once to an advisor on our team and once to a client, to an organization. As there was some issue with a donor that was fraudulent and somehow money got taken out of the organization's account. So we just thought this was super important. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Well, I just want to tell people what happened when I went to the bank, when I went to try to track it down, right, to see. So I called the bank fraud line. I looked online, there's a fraud line. I talked to the person. She said, here's what to do, gave me very specific information about what to do. And she said, oh, yes, this is happening frequently now. She said, this is not uncommon. She said, go to my local bank, fill out the form there. She just told me what to do. Now, I'm going to get the money back. It's going to take probably 3 months. But when I went to my local bank, they too said, oh, this is happening a lot, which really, all right, we all need to be aware. Now, what simple thing might I have done that would have prevented it? Had I used an indelible ink pen?
Okay, so this is what the bank told you, that you're going to...
No.
Oh, no?
They didn't tell me that.
I thought the bank told you that. Okay.
They didn't tell me that, but I realized, and then I realized I had heard something about a problem like this, where they had talked about, you want to keep from being scammed, use an indelible ink pen on your checks.
All right, so we just went on Amazon and we looked, and there are pens that are specifically labeled to prevent check washing. That's what it's called. They wash the ink off, a regular pen off your check somehow. So these indelible ink pens are available literally for $2. So you can buy a 6-pack for $12 of pens that have this check washing prevention ink in them. They're gel pens of some sort or another. So that's one potential easy fix. Yes. I mean, my suggestion, of course, is to start doing more and more online payments. I think it is, while of course there are hackers trying to hack into accounts, I think that will prevent some of this as well, of course. But paying attention to your accounts every day.
Yeah, and don't be like me, right? Don't be lackadaisical. I was clearly lackadaisical, which I am, as Amy knows. I am sometimes lackadaisical about things like this. I need to pay close attention. I need to check and make sure that the checks that get cleared, that everything is as it should be, and do it regularly.
Right. And honestly, I mean, I have both my business and personal accounts on apps on my phone. I look every morning just as a habit, and, it's not going to prevent it, but I will catch it probably quickly, because I do it takes 30 seconds. In the morning, I open the New York Times app, I look at the weather app, I check our bank accounts apps. It takes, my morning routine takes, if I read the whole Times, New York Times, it takes me 30 or 40 minutes, but that's part of I check the weather app, I check our bank accounts app, I check the New York Times, and sometimes I check Facebook.
Amy, I've often teased you because you check the bank accounts as often as you brush your teeth, and I've often teased you about that. But clearly, your way of doing things is right. And if you have a chance to talk to people who send checks, right? If you have a chance to talk to or to communicate with your donors, if you could put something in a newsletter, or you certainly don't want to scare people away from giving, but you want to make them alert also that there is a lot of fraud around now.
Right. So think about what Andrea's story tells us. So she sent it through the U.S. postal system, and it was going to the state of New Jersey. So either the fraud's in the U.S. postal system or in the state. Now, I know you may be laughing. Of course, it seems so obvious somebody that's working for the state is doing this. But it's not like, you were sending it to some seedy, there was nothing crazy about it.
Yeah.
These were, I know, two government institutions, and the fraud is likely somewhere inside one of them. And so you can't unfortunately, you can't trust anything or anyone these days. So you just have to pay attention. And, we wanted to do a little public service announcement. I know this is super different than our normal podcast, but, because it has happened so frequently, recently, we were helping a client with this issue that had funds stolen. We were not helping an advisor, but commiserating with an advisor, and then this just seemed like, okay, so check your bank accounts regularly, pay attention to your credit cards. I know it's a hassle. If you're not in the habit, it is going to take some effort, but it's worth it. I mean, it's such a hassle to get the money back, to undo it. And, this one little, if you are writing checks and you use a special pen, apparently it foils the thief. But paying attention to your bank accounts, transferring money more online than writing checks more and more whenever you can is probably a safer bet.
Yeah. And, it's an interesting question to think about whether people who are running nonprofits, whether development directors should talk to donors about this as an issue, right?
Well, yes. And of course, I wanted to say, we certainly are not experts by any stretch of the imagination, but you should have these conversations at your organizations with board members. Find out what they know. Talk to a local attorney. Talk to your local bank. I mean, we want to start the conversation. We're not providing advice or, we're making little suggestions. But the truth is, this is not obviously our area of expertise. But we want you to start having this conversation and thinking about who to have the conversation with at the board level, at your administrative level. Do you want to talk about it with donors? How would you have those conversations? That kind of thing.
Yeah, and simple things like if someone tells you that they've sent you a check and the check doesn't arrive, you should let them know that the check hasn't arrived.
I think that is maybe one of the things that happened with the client. There was some circular thing. I don't know what the exact story is, but that's super interesting. A donor thinks they made a donation, or they said they made a donation, and it doesn't show up.
Yeah, and it's easy to think, well, the donor just didn't give. The reality is that they may have sent a check, and it may have gotten waylaid in somebody else's account, and, Anyway, it's sad when we have to talk about things like this, when we have to deal with things like this, but I think the more we're alert and aware of it, the more we can be talking to at least our insiders about these problems, the more we can distribute anti-check washing pens, gel pens, or whatever they are, the better. And I hope this stuff doesn't happen to you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back on a real, more fundraising related topic next week, but we just wanted to do a little public service announcement, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining Amy and Andrea for today's All About Capital Campaigns. To learn more about them and their work together, visit capitalcampaignpro.com. And please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you.